There's a rule everyone knows. Use the right tool for the job. Simple, obvious, almost boring. And yet, some people hear that rule and treat it like a suggestion. Because in their mind, tools aren't specific. They're interchangeable. A blade is a blade. A machine is a machine. Metal is metal. And once you believe that, you stop asking the only question that matters. What is this actually designed to do? That's when things get creative. Dangerously creative. Because this video isn't about accidents. It's about people who looked at a perfectly good solution and decided to improvise something worse, something faster, something cheaper, something that made sense right up until physics got involved. 10 moments where imagination replaced engineering. 10 times someone said, "This should work," and physics responded, "No." Number 1. The tool that fought back. There's a certain kind of guy who doesn't trust safety features, not because he doesn't understand them, but because he thinks he understands them better. Guards, restrictions, manufacturer warnings, those aren't protections, those are limitations, things that get in the way, slow you down, make the job harder than it needs to be. And he doesn't like that, because in his mind, efficiency matters more than caution. So when he looks at a tool, he doesn't see design, he sees potential. Potential to be improved, modified, upgraded. That's how this starts. A normal suburban backyard. A tree that needs cutting. Nothing complicated, nothing urgent. Just a job. And in his hands, a perfectly functional angle grinder. Compact, fast, designed for controlled cutting. Metal, tile, precise work. But to him, that's not enough, because he also has something else. A chainsaw blade. Bigger, more aggressive, designed to tear through wood. Now pause, because these two things are not meant to meet. An angle grinder spins incredibly fast, much faster than a chainsaw. And more importantly, it has almost no resistance control. Chainsaws manage kickback. Angle grinders don't, which means when you combine them, you don't get a better tool. You get something unstable, unpredictable, violent. But he doesn't see that, because what he sees is faster cutting. So he removes the guard. Of course he does, because guards are annoying. They block access, limit angles, and in his mind, they're unnecessary, because he's careful. He knows what he's doing. That's the belief, the one that shows up right before things go wrong. He attaches the blade, tightens it down, looks at it, feels right, looks powerful, looks like something that should work, and that's enough. He starts the tool, the motor kicks in, the blade spins, fast, too fast, but there's no immediate problem, no warning, no sign that anything is wrong. And that's the most dangerous moment, because when bad setups work briefly, people assume they work completely. He brings it to the wood, applies pressure, and at first, it cuts. Fast, aggressive, exactly how he imagined. And in that moment, he's right. It works. But here's the part he didn't understand. Cutting isn't the danger. Kickback is. Because when a rotating blade meets resistance, it doesn't slow down. It redirects, violently, instantly. And without a guard, there's nothing to stop that motion. Nothing to absorb it, nothing to protect him from it. The blade catches, just slightly, enough. Enough to shift force, enough to break control, and in a fraction of a second, everything changes. The tool doesn't stall, it reacts, snaps upward, toward him. Not slowly, not predictably, just raw mechanical response. Because the tool isn't thinking, it's following physics, and physics doesn't hesitate. There's no correction, no recovery, because once that motion starts, it's already too late. The same speed that made it effective makes it uncontrollable. The same power that made it appealing makes it lethal. And just like that, the upgrade proves what it really was, not an improvement, a mistake. The backyard goes quiet again, exactly like before, because nothing changed. The tree is still there, the tool still exists. The only difference is what happened when someone decided they understood it better than the people who built it. Because in the end, he didn't lose to the blade. He didn't lose to the tool. He lost to the idea that removing safety makes something more efficient. But safety isn't what slows tools down. It's what keeps them from turning on you. And the moment you take that away, you're no longer using the tool. You're just standing in front of it. No. 2. The clean that burned the house down. There's a very specific kind of logic that only exists when someone is too lazy to do something properly. Not stupid, not reckless, just efficient in their own head. Because cleaning car parts is annoying. Grease, oil, stubborn residue that doesn't come off easily. And doing it the right way takes time. Solvent, scrubbing, waiting. Which is exactly the kind of process people try to avoid. So instead, he looks around his kitchen. And he sees a machine that cleans things automatically with water, heat, pressure, a dishwasher. Now, in his mind, this is obvious. A dishwasher cleans dirty stuff. Car parts are dirty stuff. So, problem solved. That's the entire thought process. No deeper analysis, no second step. Just a straight line between dirty and machine that removes dirty. And once that line exists, everything else gets ignored. Like the fact that dishwashers are designed for food residue, mild detergents, materials that don't release fumes, not oil, industrial grease, flammable liquids. But again, that's not visible. What's visible is, it washes. So he loads it up. Metal parts, engine components, everything that would normally require a garage setup. Now pause, because this is where the second bad idea enters. Because water alone won't clean grease, and he knows that. So he adds something stronger, gasoline. Just a little, enough to help. Because gasoline cuts through oil. That's what it does. And in his mind, that makes it perfect. Cleaner, stronger, more efficient. What he doesn't understand is that gasoline doesn't just clean, it evaporates, turns into vapor, and those vapors are extremely flammable, especially in enclosed spaces, especially when heated. And a dishwasher is literally designed to heat water, circulate air, dry contents with high temperature, which means he didn't just build a cleaning system, he built a sealed box full of fuel vapor with a heating cycle. But none of that is happening in his head, because in his head, this is working. He closes the door, presses start, and walks away. Because why wouldn't he? That's the whole point. Automation. Let the machine do the work. Now for a moment, everything is normal. The cycle begins, water sprays, heat rises. The system runs exactly as it was designed to. Which is the problem, because it's working perfectly for the wrong materials. The gasoline begins to evaporate, filling the interior with vapor. Invisible, silent, but building, concentrating. And inside that space, it reaches a point, a threshold, where all it needs is ignition. Now here's the thing about dishwashers. They have heating elements, electrical components, switches, all things that can create sparks. Tiny, almost nothing, unless there's fuel. And now, there is. The moment happens instantly. No warning, no buildup you can see, just a reaction. Fuel plus heat plus spark. And the system changes from cleaning to combustion. The sound is not what he expected, because dishwashers don't make noise like that. The door doesn't contain it, because it wasn't built to. And now, everything inside is no longer contained. It escapes. Fast. Violent. Uncontrolled. The kitchen is no longer a kitchen. It's part of the reaction. And the idea that started as, this will save time, becomes something else entirely. Because fire doesn't care why it started. It just spreads. The machine stops. Not because it's done, but because it's no longer a machine. And the result is not a cleaner part. It's a completely different problem. One that no longer fits inside a dishwasher. Because, in the end, He didn't misunderstand cleaning. He misunderstood chemistry. He treated gasoline like a tool, instead of what it actually is, fuel. And when you put fuel inside a system designed to heat things, you're not speeding up a process. You're starting a new one. And that process doesn't clean anything. It removes it completely. Number 3. The turn that wasn't connected. There's a moment in every bad decision where someone knows they should stop. Not dramatically, not like a warning siren, just a quiet thought. This isn't right. Most people listen to that. They pull over. They wait. They fix it properly. He didn't. Because stopping is inconvenient. And inconvenience is something people love to solve quickly, especially when it feels small, especially when it feels temporary. That's how this starts. A normal drive. Nothing extreme, no race, no rush. Just movement from one place to another until something breaks. The steering wheel. Not completely, not catastrophically, just enough to matter. Loose, disconnected, unreliable. The kind of problem that says you should not keep driving, but also the kind of problem that doesn't stop the car immediately. And that's the trap. Because if it still sort of works, people assume it will keep working, at least for a little while, just enough to get home, just enough to avoid dealing with it right now. So he pulls over, steps out, looks at it, and instead of seeing a system, he sees a gap, something missing, something he can replace. Because to him, steering is simple. Turn the wheel, car turns. So if the wheel isn't working, he just needs something else to turn. Something that grips, something strong, something he already has. Vice grips, metal, tight, adjustable, they clamp. And in his mind, that's enough. Now pause, because steering is not just rotation, it's precision, small inputs, smooth transitions, continuous control, and more importantly, it's connected. A system that translates movement into direction. Exactly. Consistently. Vice grips do none of that. They grab, they lock, they slip. They are not designed for control. They are designed for force. But again, that difference isn't obvious. What's obvious is they turn. So he clamps them on, tests it, moves them slightly. The wheels respond, and that's the confirmation. See? It works. Because early function feels like full function. He gets back in, starts driving, slow at first, careful, because somewhere in the back of his mind, he knows this isn't right. But nothing goes wrong. The car moves, the road is clear, everything seems manageable. And that's when confidence grows, because success, even temporary, erases doubt. He turns, left, right. It responds, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to keep going, enough to justify the decision. And that's when speed increases, not dramatically, just slightly. But slightly is all it takes. Because control systems don't fail all at once. They fail when they're needed most. He approaches a curve. Nothing sharp, nothing unusual, just a normal part of the road. The kind of turn you don't think about when everything is working. He moves the grips, applies input, but this time it's different. The connection isn't clean. The movement isn't smooth. Because vice grips don't translate motion, they interrupt it. They shift, just slightly. Enough to change alignment, enough to break precision. And now, the car doesn't respond the way it should. The turn is off, not by much, just enough. Enough to put the car in the wrong place, at the wrong angle, at the wrong time. He tries to correct, moves harder, faster, but force isn't control. And now, the system is already unstable. The grips slip, the input breaks, and suddenly, there's nothing. No connection, no steering, just motion. Forward, uncontrolled. Because once direction is lost, you don't get it back instantly. Not at speed, not in motion. The road continues, exactly as it always does. But now, he's no longer following it. The car leaves the path, and everything that happens after is just the result of that first failure. The moment where it kind of works became it doesn't work at all. The vehicle stops, eventually. Everything does. But not in the way he planned. Because in the end, he didn't lose to the road. He didn't lose to speed. He lost to the assumption that control systems can be replaced by something that only looks like control. That turning something is the same as steering it. But steering isn't force, it's connection. And the moment you break that, you're not driving anymore. You're just moving, until something else stops you. Number 4, the strap that snapped back. There's a difference between holding something still and holding something that moves.
It sounds obvious. It isn't. Because to most people, a strap is a strap. It's strong, it's tight, it keeps things in place. That's what it does. So if it can hold down furniture in the back of a truck, why wouldn't it hold a person? That's the logic. Simple, direct, completely wrong. This starts the way a lot of bad ideas do. Outside, friends, open space. Someone mentioned slacklining, balancing on a line between two trees, walking across, testing coordination. Looks fun, looks doable, looks like something you could set up in 5 minutes. But there's a problem. They don't have a slackline, and buying one takes time, costs money, requires effort, which means they're not doing that. Instead, they look around, and they see something else. A ratchet strap, bright, heavy-duty, designed to secure cargo. And in their mind, this is perfect, because it's strong, rated for hundreds of pounds, more than enough to hold a person.
So again, problem solved. Now pause, because slacklines are not just ropes. They're elastic systems. They stretch, they absorb movement, they respond to shifts in weight, they give you time to adjust. Balance is possible because the system is forgiving. A ratchet strap is not. It's rigid, almost no stretch, designed to stay exactly where it's tightened, which means any movement on it doesn't get absorbed. It gets reflected, back, immediately. But that difference is invisible until you step on it. They set it up, tree to tree, pull it tight, very tight, because tight means stable, right? That's the assumption. The strap is solid, doesn't sag, doesn't move, looks perfect. And that's the trap, because something that looks stable can be completely unforgiving. He steps up, places a foot on it. It holds. No movement, no bounce. And that feels good, because stability feels like safety. He lifts the other foot, commits. Now he's on it, standing, balancing, and for a moment, it works. He adjusts, small movements, trying to find center, trying to control it. And this is where everything changes, because the moment he shifts, the strap doesn't absorb it. It reacts, instantly. His weight moves, the strap pushes back, not gently, not gradually, just immediate response. And that feedback is faster than he is. He overcorrects, because humans always do. Lean one way, then too far the other, trying to stabilize something that doesn't stabilize. The movement builds, back and forth, faster, stronger, because there's no damping, no softness, no delay, just energy returning immediately. And now, it's no longer balance, it's oscillation. The strap tightens, even more, because tension increases with movement. And that tension is stored energy, a lot of it, more than it looks like, more than it feels like, until it releases. And it does. Not slowly, not predictably, just failure. The mechanism gives, the strap slips, or snaps loose. And in that exact moment, all the stored energy goes somewhere, back, toward the center, toward him, fast. Because when tension disappears, force doesn't. It redirects. The metal ratchet becomes a projectile, not by intention, by design. Because that's what happens when energy has nowhere else to go. The impact is immediate, violent, and completely avoidable. Everything goes quiet again. The trees don't move. The strap lies there, still strong, still intact, because nothing broke, nothing malfunctioned. The system worked exactly as it was supposed to. It held cargo. It resisted movement. It stored tension. And when that tension was released, it responded exactly how physics dictates. Because in the end, he didn't lose to the strap. He lost to the assumption that strength is the same as suitability. That if something can hold weight, it can handle movement. But holding something still and controlling something dynamic are not the same thing. And when you confuse the two, you don't get instability, you get consequences. Immediate ones. Number 5. The suspension that was never meant to be held together. There are tools designed to control force, and then there are tools that were never meant to deal with it at all. The problem is, to someone who doesn't understand the difference, they all look the same. Strong, durable, reliable, especially when you use enough of them. Because there's a belief people love. If one isn't enough, just add more. More equals stronger. Stronger equals safer, right? That's the logic. And like most bad logic, it works, right up until it doesn't. This starts in a garage. Concrete floor, open hood. Car lifted just enough to make things accessible. Nothing unusual, just a repair. Suspension work. A spring that needs to be removed, replaced. Simple. At least, in theory. But here's the part people underestimate. Suspension springs don't just sit there. They store energy. A lot of it. Compressed steel, holding force constantly, waiting. And to remove them safely, you need a specific tool, a spring compressor. Something designed to grip evenly, apply pressure gradually, control release. Because if that energy gets released suddenly, it doesn't move gently, it explodes. But tools like that cost money, require planning, and more importantly, require respect for what you're dealing with. He didn't have that. What he had were zip ties, plastic, flexible, strong enough for the things they're meant to do, bundling wires, holding small loads, temporary fixes. And in his mind, that was enough, because again, they're strong, they hold things, and if one can't handle it, 10 can, or 20, or however many it takes to feel convincing. So he wraps them around the spring, multiple layers, tight, secure, looks solid.
Feels solid. And that's all he needs. Now pause. Because strength is not just about holding, it's about how something fails. Metal tools bend, warn you, deform, give you signs. Plastic doesn't. It holds until it doesn't. And when it fails completely, instantly. No warning, no transition, just gone. But again, that's not visible. What's visible is they're holding. So he proceeds, begins removing the spring, slowly, carefully, because even without understanding, there's a sense that this matters, that something here is different. But confidence overrides caution, because nothing has gone wrong yet. The zip ties hold, the spring stays compressed, everything appears under control. And that's the most dangerous moment. Because when unstable systems hold briefly, people assume they're stable. He continues, loosening, adjusting, working the component free. And all the while, that energy is still there, still stored, still waiting. The zip ties aren't controlling it, they're delaying it. And delay is not the same as safety. Then, one fails. Not dramatically, just a small snap, a quiet break, almost nothing. But that's all it takes. Because the system isn't designed to redistribute load, it's designed to fail. Chain reaction. One goes, the load shifts. Another takes more than it can handle. Then another. Then another. Faster, until there's nothing left holding it. And in that exact moment, everything that was contained is released, all at once. The spring doesn't expand, it launches. Because stored energy doesn't disappear, it converts into motion, into force, into something moving far faster than it ever should. The direction isn't controlled,
The speed isn't reduced, it just goes, and whatever is in the path becomes part of the result. The garage stays the same, the tools are still there, the zip ties, broken, scattered. Because they did exactly what they were designed to do, hold small loads. Temporarily. They weren't wrong. They weren't defective. They were used in a situation they were never meant for. Because in the end, he didn't lose to the spring. He lost to the assumption that more of the wrong tool becomes the right one, that quantity replaces design. But design exists for a reason, especially when you're dealing with stored energy, because energy doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care what you use to contain it. It only cares about when that containment fails. And when it does, it doesn't leak out. It leaves. Immediately. Number 6. The fire that didn't need help. There's a point in every backyard gathering where someone decides things are taking too long. The food isn't ready. The coals aren't hot enough. The fire isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And instead of waiting, they try to speed it up. Because waiting feels inefficient. And inefficiency is something people fix, especially when they think they understand the system. Fire needs oxygen. That's basic. More oxygen means more fire. So if you add more air, you get a bigger flame. Faster heat, better results. That's the logic. And technically, it's not wrong. It's just incomplete. This starts in a backyard. Grill setup, charcoal stacked, food waiting, everything normal. Except the fire is slow, smoldering, taking its time. Which is exactly what charcoal does. It builds heat gradually, controlled, predictable. But that's not fast enough. So he looks around, and he sees something. A tool. Leaf blower. Designed to move air. A lot of it. Fast, powerful, efficient. And in his mind, this is perfect. Because if a little air helps, a lot of air should help more. That's the assumption. More input equals better output. Now pause. Because fire doesn't scale linearly. You don't just get more flame. You get instability. You get sparks. You get ignition points where you didn't expect them. You get chaos. But again, that's not visible. What's visible is, it's going to light faster. So he turns it on, points it at the grill, air blasts into the coals, and immediately, it works. The fire responds, flames rise, heat increases, everything looks better, stronger, faster, exactly what he wanted. And that's the confirmation. See? Genius. Because early success validates bad ideas. He leans in, keeps the airflow going, pushes more oxygen into the system, and now, the fire isn't controlled anymore. It's reacting. The coals glow hotter, faster than they should. The flames stretch, unstable. Because now the fire isn't just burning, it's feeding, aggressively. The airstream lifts embers, tiny pieces of burning material, carries them out of the grill, into the air. And this is where things change, because once fire leaves its container, it stops being predictable. Those embers land. Nearby surfaces, dry wood, leaves, anything that burns. And they don't need much, just heat, just contact, just time, which they now have. The flames grow, not just in the grill, around it, because the system has expanded, beyond where it was meant to exist. He notices. Of course he does, because now, this isn't cooking anymore. It's something else. He pulls back, tries to stop it, turns off the blower. But stopping input doesn't stop reaction. Because the fire has already spread, already found new fuel, already moved past control. And now, everything that was close becomes part of the problem. The grill, the yard, the space, all connected. Because fire doesn't stay where you started it. It goes where it can. And once it has that option, you don't guide it. You react to it. Too late. The backyard changes. Fast. Because fire doesn't scale slowly when it escapes. It accelerates, consumes, spreads. And the idea that started as, this will be quicker, becomes something that no longer has anything to do with cooking. Because in the end, he didn't misunderstand fire. He misunderstood control. He thought more input meant better results. But some systems don't reward intensity. They punish it. Because fire doesn't need help. It needs limits. And the moment you remove those, you're not making it better. You're just giving it permission to become something else. Number 7. The tool that was never meant to be held that way. There are tools you respect, and then there are tools people think they understand. A hammer? Simple. You swing it. It hits. That's it. So when something looks like a hammer, feels like a hammer, is made of metal like a hammer, people assume it is a hammer. That's the shortcut. Form over function. Because if it's heavy enough, hard enough, then it should work, right? That's the logic. And it only takes one moment for that logic to collapse completely. This starts somewhere familiar. Backyard, garage, a small job. Something that doesn't feel important enough to prepare for. A nail, a loose piece of wood. Something that just needs to be tapped into place. Quick, easy. Except, there's no hammer. And instead of stopping, instead of getting the right tool, he looks around. Because the solution has to be nearby. Something that can do the job. Something close enough. And that's when he sees it. A handgun. Metal. Solid. Compact. Heavy enough. And in his mind, that's all that matters. Because again, he's not thinking about what it does. He's thinking about what it looks like. A solid object that can hit another object. So, problem solved. Now pause. Because a firearm is not a passive tool. It's not just weight. It's a system, a mechanism, designed to do one thing, extremely efficiently, convert pressure into force, projectile force, and everything about its design is built around that function. Trigger, firing pin, chamber, all waiting, all active, all ready. But none of that is part of his thinking, because he's not using it as a gun. He's using it as a hammer. That's the assumption. That intention changes function. It doesn't. He grips it, holds it by the barrel, reverses it, because the handle isn't what he wants. The solid end is, the part that feels like it can strike. And now, he's holding a system in the exact way it was never meant to be held. He lines it up, positions it, and taps. Light at first. Nothing happens, because nothing should. So that confirms it. It's fine. He hits again, harder, because the nail isn't moving, and force is how you fix that. But here's the part he doesn't see. Inside that system, there are tolerances, movements, components that respond to impact. Even if the trigger isn't pulled, force travels through the frame, through the mechanism, into places that are not meant to absorb it. He strikes again. More force, more confidence, because now it's just a matter of hitting it harder. And that's when everything aligns. The angle, the pressure, the internal movement, all of it happens in one moment, unseen, unnoticed, until it's too late. The system activates, not because he intended it, because he forced it into a condition where intention doesn't matter. The discharge is immediate, violent, final. Because this isn't a tool that warns you. It doesn't resist. It doesn't slow down. It does exactly what it was designed to do the moment the conditions are met. And those conditions don't require understanding, just force. The space goes silent, exactly like before, because nothing changed. The object didn't fail. The system didn't malfunction. It worked. Perfectly, exactly as designed. Because in the end, he didn't misuse a hammer. He misidentified a weapon. He treated something active like it was passive. Something designed for precision like it was meant for impact. But tools don't become safer just because you decide they are. And systems don't forget what they're built to do just because you use them differently. Because intention doesn't override design. And the moment you ignore that, you're no longer using the tool, you're just triggering it. Number 8. The mix that wasn't a formula. There's a certain kind of confidence that comes from reading just enough to feel like you understand something. Not chemistry, not reactions, just the surface idea. Cleaner makes things clean. And if one cleaner works, then two should work better. That's the shortcut. More input, better result. Because in everyday life, that logic works. More soap leads to cleaner dishes. More detergent leads to cleaner clothes. So when something is dirty enough, you don't change method. You increase intensity. That's how this starts. A garage. Or maybe a shed. Somewhere slightly separated from the house, because that's where projects happen. He's dealing with a problem. Pool maintenance. Water isn't clear. Smell is off. Something needs fixing. And like everything else in this video, he doesn't want to do it properly, because proper means testing levels, measuring chemicals, following instructions, which takes time, requires patience, requires respecting something he doesn't think needs respect. So instead, he improvises. He gathers what he has, different cleaners, different chemicals, all labeled, all designed for specific uses. But in his mind, they share one function: make things clean. So combining them should amplify that effect. Now pause, because chemistry is not additive, it's reactive. You don't get more clean. You get entirely new substances, new reactions, new outputs. Sometimes harmless, sometimes not, and sometimes immediately dangerous. But none of that is obvious, because nothing is happening yet. He pours one in, then another, mixing them together, like it's cooking, like ratios don't matter, like interaction doesn't matter, because what matters is result. And result, in his mind, is simple: cleaner water. But what he's actually creating is a reaction, invisible at first, silent. Then it begins. A smell, sharp, unfamiliar, not like chlorine, not like anything he expected. And that's the first signal, the moment where something feels off. But instead of stopping, he leans in, because curiosity often follows confusion, and confusion is where people make the worst decisions. The reaction accelerates, the mixture changes, not visually dramatic, but chemically completely different. Gases begin to form, toxic, invisible. He doesn't see them, he doesn't understand them. Because he didn't build this system, he triggered it. He inhales, just slightly, just enough. And now, it's no longer about the pool, it's about exposure. Because some reactions don't need explosions. They don't need fire. They don't need force. They just need contact. With lungs, with airways, with a body that isn't built to handle what's been created. The effect is fast, because gases don't wait. They enter, they interfere, they disrupt. And by the time he realizes this isn't cleaning anymore, it's already too late. The space changes, not physically, but chemically. The air is no longer safe, and everything that follows is just the result of a reaction that never should have happened. The containers remain, the labels are still there, because nothing was wrong with them. Each one worked perfectly, on its own, exactly as designed. The only problem was combining them, because, in the end, he didn't fail to clean the pool. He failed to understand that chemistry is not about intention, it's about interaction. And interaction doesn't care what you were trying to do. It only cares what you actually created. Because some things don't scale with effort. They change entirely. And when they do, you don't get a stronger version of what you wanted. You get something else. Something that doesn't fix the problem. It replaces it. Immediately. Number 9. The tool that fired when it wasn't supposed to. There's a certain mindset that turns every tool into a universal solution. Doesn't matter what it's designed for, doesn't matter how it works. If it can apply force, it can solve the problem. That's the belief. And it shows up most clearly in workshops, garages, places where tools are everywhere and patience is not. Because when something gets stuck, people don't analyze it, they attack it. Pull harder, hit harder, use something stronger. And if the right tool isn't nearby, they improvise. This starts exactly like that. A small issue, something jammed, a piece that won't move, maybe a stuck latch, maybe a piece of wood that won't separate. Nothing major, just annoying. The kind of thing that should take 2 minutes, but doesn't. And that's enough to trigger the shortcut. He looks around, searching for something that can fix it. Not correctly, just quickly. And that's when he sees it. A nail gun. Compressed air. Powerful. Efficient. Designed to drive nails through solid material in a fraction of a second. And in his mind, that power is exactly what he needs. Because if something won't move, force will move it. That's always the assumption. Now pause, because a nail gun is not a pushing tool. It's not a prying tool. It's not even a general-purpose impact tool. It's a firing mechanism. It doesn't apply gradual force. It delivers instant penetration, at speed, in one direction, and more importantly, it is always ready to do exactly that. But none of that matters to him, because he's not using it as a nail gun. He's using it as a solution. He positions it, presses it against the object, trying to push, trying to force movement. Because it's strong, and strong tools fix problems, right? He applies pressure, leans into it, more force, more commitment, because the object isn't moving. And when things don't move, people push harder. What he doesn't realize is that nail guns are designed with triggers and contact points, safety mechanisms that rely on how they're pressed, how they're angled, how force is applied. And when you misuse that system, you don't disable it, you activate it. The alignment changes, slightly, enough. The contact point engages. The trigger is pressed, not intentionally, but mechanically. And in that exact moment, the system does what it was built to do. It fires. Not slowly, not predictably, just instantly. Because that's the point. A nail launches. Fast, direct, with enough force to pass through material and anything else in its path. There's no warning, no buildup, because tools like this aren't designed to hesitate. They're designed to act. And once they act, there's no reversing it. The workshop goes quiet. Tools still where they were. Everything unchanged. Because nothing malfunctioned. Nothing broke. The nail gun worked perfectly. Exactly as intended. Because in the end, he didn't misuse force. He misused direction. He treated something precise like it was general. Something controlled like it was flexible. But tools don't expand their purpose just because you need them to. And power, without understanding, doesn't solve problems. It creates new ones. Faster. No. 10. The shortcut that didn't hold. There's a very specific kind of decision that only exists when someone doesn't want to do something properly. Not because it's hard. Not because it's impossible. Just because it's inconvenient. Climbing up, climbing down. Moving the ladder. Repeating the process. It takes time, effort, patience. And those are exactly the things people try to eliminate. Because if you can find a way to do it all at once, you win. That's the mindset. Efficiency over process. Shortcut over structure. And it usually starts with a simple job. Tree trimming. Branches too high to reach. Nothing dangerous on its own, just work. But the way you approach it changes everything. He sets up a ladder, leans it against the tree, climbs up, reaches a branch, cuts it, then climbs down, moves the ladder, climbs again. And after a few times, that's enough. Because repetition creates frustration, and frustration creates shortcuts. He looks at the setup, looks at the distance, looks at the problem, and decides there has to be a better way. So instead of moving himself, he decides to move the base, the support, the foundation. Because if the ladder can move, he doesn't have to. That's the idea. So he brings in something else, A lawnmower. Heavy. Powered. Stable enough, at least from the distance. And in his mind, this solves everything. Because now, he can stand on the ladder and move across the yard without climbing down. Smooth. Continuous. Efficient. That's the plan. Now pause. Because ladders are not platforms. They're balance systems. They rely on fixed contact points, stable ground, consistent support. The moment you remove stability, you remove function. And a lawnmower is not stable ground. It moves, vibrates, responds to terrain, which means anything resting on it is no longer supported. It's balanced, precariously. But again, that difference isn't obvious. What's obvious is it holds. So he sets it up. Ladder base resting against the mower, engine running, because it needs to move. He climbs up, feels steady enough, and that's all it takes, because steady enough is the most dangerous threshold. He starts working, cuts one branch, then another. Then he decides to move, slowly, carefully, using the mower to reposition. And for a moment, it works. The ladder shifts. He stays on. Everything feels controlled. But here's the problem. Movement introduces variables, ground changes, small bumps, uneven surfaces, things that don't matter when you're standing on the ground, but matter completely when your balance depends on them. The mower rolls, hits something small, a dip, a shift, nothing dramatic, but enough. Enough to move the base, just slightly, and that slight movement is everything. Because ladders don't fail gradually. They fail at the moment balance is lost. The angle changes, the contact breaks, and now there's no support, just a structure in motion, without stability. He tries to correct, instinct, grab, adjust, but correction requires time, and time is something he doesn't have. Because once the base moves, the top follows, fast. The ladder shifts, tilts, and then it's no longer a ladder. It's falling, and he's on it. The ground is no longer distant. It's immediate, because gravity doesn't care about intention, or effort, or plans. It just responds to position. The mower stops, eventually. Everything does, but not in the way he expected. The yard is quiet again. The tree is still there. The ladder on the ground. Because nothing broke. Nothing failed. The mower worked. The ladder worked. Each did exactly what they were designed to do, separately. The only mistake was combining them. Because in the end, he didn't lose to the height. He didn't lose to the tools. He lost to the idea that efficiency replaces stability. That doing something faster means doing it better. But some systems only work when you respect their limits. And the moment you remove those limits, you don't improve the process, you remove the safety. And once that's gone, everything else follows. Immediately. 10 tools, 10 situations, 10 completely different ideas, but the same mistake every single time. They didn't lack solutions, they ignored them. They replaced design with improvisation, replaced knowledge with confidence, replaced the right tool with something that looked close enough. And close enough is where everything breaks. They didn't use the wrong tool by accident. They chose it because they thought they were smarter than the right one. Which one made you stop, not laugh, not shake your head? The one that made you think, yeah, I've done something like that. Drop the number and be honest. How close have you come to being on this list?